At 21, he was convicted of a murder he didn't commit, and then spent the next 22 years of his life on death row. Just 11 days before his execution, he was released when Texas' highest appeals court threw out his conviction, citing overwhelming evidence of police and prosecutorial misconduct. His story was the subject of the play, The Exonerated, and was also chronicled in his autobiography, Chasing Justice. Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse. Coming up on InnerVIEWS, our conversation with the man who suffered through this horrifying nightmare and lived to tell the tale, Kerry Max Cook. Are there times you look back on this whole story and think about things you could have done differently? And I'm talking about the time before the murder happened.
Time before the murder. No, you can't. I don't spend any time dwelling on things of that nature. I don't look back and think what I could have done different. I was a typical kid. My father was a career soldier. I was born and raised in Stuttgart, Germany. My father was a decorated soldier and came to the United States when I was 14 years old. Life was just pretty much beginning. I see what you mean. Yes, there is something I regret. I wish I would have stayed in school. I now know the importance, and I try to teach kids the importance of school and college and all that. I wish I never would have gotten in trouble, never would have ran away from home and stole those cars to get from point A to point B, because that's certainly what landed me in the computer. So when they matched the fingerprint up, even though they aged it and all the perjury that has to do with that I lost all credibility as a suspect. So I would have stayed in school, put my nose to the grind, would have never gotten in trouble, would have watched who I hung out with. I would have done all that differently. And I guess I missed your question, but wow, did I sit on death row and revisit those thoughts and those decisions?
When do you get to the point where you can release that, when you can stop thinking about woulda, shoulda, couldas, and just think about the moment at hand? Because I'm thinking, too, you're sitting in this small cell for years on end, basically, and it'd be so easy to get lost in the blame of everybody else. This is what they did to me. But if you're in that place, in that part of your mind, you can't move forward. You couldn't have brought yourself together to study and do all the legal stuff. And
I never got lost. I never got caught up in that to begin with. Yes, when I arrived at Texas death row, there was the initial, and it was during the most violent era of the Texas Department of Corrections before, Justice declared it cruel and unusual punishment because it was so violent and brutal. The prison system, Texas death row as well. I was too stunned for that. I got to Texas death row and the door shut behind me, and 5x9 cell. I could touch all four walls like this, and I thought, oh my God, how did this happen? I mean, because I went from out of the courtroom to Texas death row. It wasn't like a grace period of a week or 7 days. I didn't see my mom and dad. I went like, wow, the next day I'm going, Buck Rogers in the 21st century. I'm sitting on Texas death row and the steel door is shut behind me, and I'm thinking, how did this happen? Yeah. How is this really possible? I didn't have time to dwell on any anger or things of that nature. I felt like fight and I had a chance. Do nothing, fight and have a chance, and I still might die. Do nothing, I was certain to die. Yeah. So from that moment on, about the first week after being on death row, first few days, I said, how am I going to do? Well, first of all, the trial was like a foreign language to me. I have to understand the legal process that actually convicted me innocent. I have to understand that. It's my only chance to do anything about it, to overcome it. So I studied the law every moment I had. I studied from an archaic law library. Most of the pages would be torn out from, because death row was very poor. So they used the paper to roast tobacco, paperless tobacco. Yeah. So I'd get to a really important Supreme Court citation governing the law, setting the precedent, and the next page would be gone. It's, oh, another smoker, okay. So but I read everything I could get my hands on, every law book. I became very adept with the law and what had happened to me, and I eventually wrote motions for the other prisoners because there was a lot of, everyone is indigent on Texas death row. There are no hired attorneys. They're all court appointed. And I learned the law, and I basically helped others as much as I could, and I charged stamp money so I could write the media, and basically, Ernie, I just never gave up. I never could, because I knew if I did, death was certain. It was always a shadow. Always a shadow.
I'm going to take you back a little bit to help flesh out the actual case. This woman who was brutally murdered,
yes,
and raped and murdered, did you know her, didn't know her? How do you see it?
I knew her. I'd met her at the swimming pool about 3 to 4 days before. Had gone over to her apartment. She invited me over to her apartment. We'd made out. We necked. I had passion marks on my neck, and I told 3 or 4 different people. I was 19 years old, and I was living at the same apartment complex. They saw all the passion marks, and I said, "Hey, it's that girl I told you about. I saw in the window nude. Her name's Linda." Went back to her apartment, and they joked and so forth with me. When I was arrested 2 months later, because of that fingerprint from entering and leaving the apartment, because the detective in the case took that fingerprint and aged it, said that was the murderer's print, 6 to 12 hours old, and I was arrested for a rape and murder 2 months later.
So you had seen her, and then 4 days later, she was raped and murdered.
She was found raped and murdered.
You
yes.
were out with a bunch of friends, or at a bunch of friends' apartment, at the same complex?
Yes. And they saw all that, and I described, "Oh, yeah, that girl I told you about, Linda? Yeah, that's where." And they said, "Oh, wow, you got lucky." I said, "Yeah, didn't think nothing about it. It's the 70s. And then Ernie...
Let me just, for one more point of reference, at the time, theoretically, that the murder happened, you and a friend actually were driving around looking for cigarettes. You had left, and then you came back?
No. The murder had already happened. It happened that morning. Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking about the next day. Yes, of course. Yes, I'm sorry.
And then they come after you because of this fingerprint. And that's the only piece of solid evidence they have that even links you with the girl is your fingerprint, correct?
Ernie, it was the only piece of evidence. And from there, they just built an entire case around me after I was arrested.
Why do you think they built it around you?
Well, it was a very brutal crime. It was a very brutal rape and murder. What happened is the original suspect, her 45-year-old married ex-lover, whom she had broken up with, who claimed he had no relationship with her, that she was like a daughter to him, thus no motive to murder her. What happens? Paula Rudolph, the only eyewitness, she's at the police station the morning of June 10th, 1977, when Paula Rudolph, the eyewitness, finds Linda's body sprawled nude in her apartment, South Tyler apartment. She's at the police station. She's describing James Mayfield to a T. She said, "I came home at 12:30 at night."
Well, that was the lover.
Yes. And I saw a man standing in Linda's bedroom. I recognized him as James Mayfield. So I said, "Don't worry, it's only me," and I went to bed. She was so certain, Ernie, that she knew him, and this is where the prosecution and all the egregious manipulation of evidence gets carried away, why it makes history as one of the worst examples of prosecutorial misconduct in American history. I'm arrested, I'm in jail. Even during the hearing, she said, "I cannot swear this is the man," but she's certainly tampered with, certainly influenced, because a year later I go to trial. I'm the man she saw. All of a sudden, my hair was brown into my shoulders. The light gave me silver hair when confronted with that. Then the light cut my hair as well. But the day of the murder, she was describing James Mayfield to a T. Said he had silver hair cut above the ears, her height. And then she told the apartment manager when they were moving her stuff, she was shaken up. Her roommate is not beaten like she originally thought. She's now dead. So she's at the apartment, and she's in the apartment manager, and the lady comes out and tells her it's either B. Carpenter or another name. I don't remember. It's in the transcripts, and she says, "I understand from the scuttlebutt, the police are, they're milling about. There's a bunch of police. I understand you got to look at the person that did this. You knew him?" She said, "Yeah, this is in the record reflects this. Yes, I knew him. Who was it?" "James Mayfield." She says, "I saw James Mayfield." She told him that. And then...
there are people, though, even watching today, after everything that's happened, you're 22 years on death row, you're getting out, the DNA evidence that finally came forward, all this, are still going to sit there and think, well, if the police arrested him, he probably did do it.
And when you stay on death row for the next 22 years, well, maybe he didn't do the murder, but he must have done something.
Yeah. I mean, how do you deal with all that?
Well, it's really painful. It's really painful because, be honest with you, Ernie, this has to happen to someone you love before you don't want to think like that anymore. It has to. I mean, I'm no different than anyone else, and you know, every day, every hour, you know, not to be histrionic, but every minute of my time on death row was extremely brutal. You know, before the ink was dry, I didn't just suffer the worst example of police and prosecutorial misconduct in American history. I also suffered the dubious distinction of being known as one of the worst brutalized men in an American institution. I was systematically raped. I was raped by the criminal justice system. I was raped by the prison administration, and I was raped by the prisoners. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I literally crawled my way out of death row. I mean,
when we see movies and TV shows about life on death row, and they show it, or life in the prison system, how do you react when you see those things, first of all, and how accurate are they?
I don't like to watch it because they're so incredibly inaccurate. Very inaccurate. Very, very, very inaccurate. The only movie I really would give any validity to was that Tom Selleck movie, and I saw it on death row, called An Innocent Man. I don't know if you remember that movie, but it was pretty accurate. It was accurate in this respect. Very accurate in this respect. He was continually, first upon getting, here he was innocent, just like me. Here he was innocent, and all these different prisoners with all their different agendas are coming to him. Well, you got to do this. You got to be like this. You got to stand for this. You got to be part of this gang. And so he, you know, he still loved his wife. I just want to get out of there. I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. It's a mistake. How am I going to ever prove it? You know, because he had misconduct in his case too, the movie rather. So everybody sort of wants a piece of you, and the enormous pressure once he got so-called disrespected. I mean, the prison vernacular is a whole new world. It has its own language, apart from the universal language being violence. But anyway, the enormous pressure was put on him to go out and stab this guy after he had sexually assaulted him. It's omnipotent. I mean, you don't have a choice. Either you want your respect, and you want, after you've been raped and you want your respect restored, then you have to go out and kill that guy, or you have to do such serious damage, multiple stabbings of him, that the only reason you didn't kill him is that a guard stopped it.
How come you're not dead today?
Well, Ernie, you know, I never ever gave up, but I long ago I saw something by Booker T. Washington, and it read, "I will let no man drag me down so far as to make me hate him." And I lived by that credo. I thought, no matter what they do to me, no matter what happens to me, I'm not going to become that person. That's not who I am, and I'm not going to allow nothing to make me that person. And so when I tell people, and I say in the book that that the cost to be here is exorbitant, and the play The Exonerated, just those lines without any further explanation, I paid the ultimate price. I gave up everything to be here. I became a sexual slave to be here. After I didn't do anything about being raped once, twice, 3 times, I was sold into slavery.
Yeah.
And I lived it for 22 years.
When you finally got out, though, and you bring up the whole rapes that happened to you, how then do you work intimacy back into your life? How can you actually, because you're married now and you have a child, how does that ever come? There must be such distrust or fear, I would think.
Well, there's a lot of baggage, of course. From reading the book, you know, I have some expletives, some graffiti carved on my backside, rather large. You know, that made remove, and it can't be removed. It's not like a tattoo. It's right. Cut really deeply into my skin. I had it looked at for possible removal, and you'd have to remove all my backside and you know, skin grafts, and it just scar me worse than what it looks like. But removing my clothes has always been a traumatic event for me, extremely traumatic. Even alone, getting in the shower. I mean, no matter where I go or where my story, who it reaches, at the end of the day, when I step in that shower and I'm naked, I'm still Kerry Cook, the guy that was raped on death row, in here.
Yeah.
Because when I have to see that, I'm reminded of it. It's all over me. It's not like I can go in a fast shower to catch your show real quick and I won't see it. I mean, there's no way not to see it. And so I guess it sort of keeps me grounded. And people say, where's your motivation? Where do you get the energy to do what you do? How did you write this book? I'm reminded of it every day.
Now, your story's told in the Exonerated, the play.
Yep.
And I think the irony of all that is you are not an exonerated man, though.
I am. The state of Texas didn't have the judicial integrity to exonerate me. I'm scientifically exonerated by DNA evidence.
Right, but you are still, in the books, you are still the man who committed these crimes, according to the state of Texas.
Only to the prosecutors. I don't think in the world of public opinion that's believed. I mean, what can I say? After the prosecution invested 26, 27, almost 30 years now into, I mean, it was like much like the proverbial doctor got caught in malpractice. They tried to bury their mistake. What can they do? What can you say with a person who has been sent to one of the worst, let's say the worst death row in America, the most killingest death row in America, certainly. And here he is, victimized by the worst example of lying, cheating, witness tampering, manufacturing evidence, suppression of evidence that shows you're innocent, called exculpatory evidence. I mean, when the Court of Criminal Appeals finally reversed my case, Ernie, in 1996, they ruled, and you can look at the opinion yourself, the conservative, Republican-based Court of Criminal Appeals, police and prosecutors did whatever it took to convict me, win at all costs. They applied a harmless error doctrine to it. Without the misconduct, without the aging of the fingerprint, suppression that I knew were hiding all that evidence, and then advancing the case, stranger on stranger, didn't know her, was a homosexual. That's why his fingerprint's on the glass. And what does a homosexual want with a female but to kill her? It was just crazy. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Murphy's Law personified. It was insane.
Right. Was there ever a point where you thought, I mean, I have to think, when you're sitting on death row, you've got to think you're never getting out. As much as you believe you're going to find, when you're seeing people disappearing because they're either being put to death or dying in prison, and you see the years go by. I mean, we're not talking you were there a year. You were there 22 years. There has to be points where you just gave up hope, or at least inside knew you would never walk free again.
I went from arriving that first 10 brutal years. I went in that first 10 years, there is no way on earth that this is going to stand. And I had my first appellate lawyer, Kerry, they changed the time of death. They aged the fingerprint, the jailhouse confession, the only evidence against you. He's recanted. So they showed him the murder pictures, told him what to testify to. Paula Rudolph, the eyewitness, she changed her testimony. ABC, boom, boom, boom. There is no way humanly possible, even the most ardent conservative court could uphold this. There's insufficient evidence to show that you committed this rape and murder. I live by that from the lawyer's point of view, but more importantly, as a human being, I mean, I had a conservative background. I was a career military brat. Yeah. You know how conservative military people are. Well, I was no different. I was raised to believe that the criminal justice system was for everybody. And then
there was a point, if I understand the story correctly, too, that you were 10 days away from being executed. 11 days away. You got to think it's coming at that point. You know, I mean, there's got to be...
No, but I mean, just to be more concise with what I was saying, here I was at first 10 years thinking, there's no way this is going to happen. I can't be executed. You know, there's not possible. It's not going to happen. And then they're dying all around me. They're being put to death. Questionable evidence, not even the trigger man, mentally retarded. I'm going, wow, I mean... And then Herrera versus Collins, where the United States Supreme Court actually ruled in 1993 that in a challenge to his execution based on factual innocence, that it's not unconstitutional to execute an innocent person provided they were given a fair trial. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to die. And that's when things changed a lot for me. That's when depression set in. I didn't stop fighting, but... I gave up a little bit, and then my brother was murdered. And in order to keep from snitching on people for sexual assault and some of the traumatic stuff I was going through, the only way I could get the administration to move me was cut myself, because then you didn't have to answer. You didn't have to tell them what happened. They just looked at you like you were a nut. So I was the man who hurt himself a lot. And so they just say, Cook, all right, let's go, pack your stuff. That, I couldn't tell them, well, what's his name had done blank, blank, blank to me, because then they would kill me for it.
Right.
You know, snitching is the worst thing you can do in prison. And I learned long ago when I snitched the first time and got beat up pretty bad, almost got beat to death, I'll never trust the administration again. People who are raped in prison can run, but they can never hide. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah. When you're I'm reading in your book, and it says you're telling people, other inmates, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. And we, of course, all assume everyone on death row says they're innocent, they're innocent. As you listen to everyone else say they were innocent, did that deflate you somewhat? Did you feel like, oh my, everybody here is saying the same thing I am? You know you're innocent, but you got to assume the rest of them aren't all innocent.
It was a snake pit. I'll tell you why. Not only does everyone say they're innocent, because what? I want to volunteer and die? I mean, what are they going to say? I mean, they're legally, that's the only legal protection they have. I mean, if they make any admission, then they're certain to die. In their mind, they're thinking, I got a chance if they think I'm innocent. I mean, what else can you do? But the pressure was, yes, as you said, correctly said, everyone says they're innocent. And then here you are saying you're innocent, and they think you're guilty too. They think you're just saying it too. Right. But when you start getting publicity that you could be innocent, they don't believe you, and they're not getting any attention. It gets a little dangerous.
Yeah. Eventually, after all of this, you go through 3 trials, correct? And on the 4th trial, you take a plea bargain.
On the eve of the 4th trial, after the DNA was found, after the judge wouldn't stop the 4th trial.
But you didn't know the results of the DNA yet.
No,
right?
I knew
you knew it wasn't you.
I knew it wasn't mine. And
yeah.
I also knew, because I believe from all the documentation, I believed in Centurion Ministries investigations, I knew beyond a shadow of doubt that DNA at that crime, that murder-rape scene was going to be James Mayfield's. And whose was it? James Mayfield's.
So you sign the plea agreement, not as guilty, but no contest.
No contest, and it even gets more historical and different from there. They brought me, after the no contest, absolutely no admission of guilt. I said to the prosecutors, I would never, no matter what, I would never plead guilty to something I didn't do. I wouldn't plead guilty to go free. I'd die first. And
right, because they'd asked you to sign off on just guilty, and they would let you go, and
yes,
you refused to do that.
And
you would have gone back to death row.
I was ready to go to trial and die, and because I had nothing else to live for and everything to die for. You know, I had my brother laid in a cold grave now, the brother of a convicted sexual murderer, homosexual, rapist, murderer, misogynistic, crazy man. My father was dying of cancer, whom did die 2 years later. Like I said, I had everything to die for, and I mean everything to live for, nothing to die for. I mean, it was crazy. It was insane. So they brought these papers to me, and this is what it said, words to this effect. And they tried to slip it in, Ernie, and I knew how unscrupulous and how these people couldn't be trusted. You read my book, vetted by one of the largest publishing companies in the world very intensely. Every single word in that book is true, and I wrote every single word of it, and it was vetted. It's all in the records, backed up, supported. They brought me then a sneaky way to try to make it look like I was guilty. They said, should there be a fourth, it's called a stipulation of evidence. Should there be a 4th trial, these witnesses would say A, B, C, and D. Rudolph would say she saw you. Mm-hmm. Edward Scott Schweitzer Jackson would say you confessed. The fingerprints, just one after another. And it would establish the guilt of the accused beyond a reasonable doubt. And I looked at that. I told Cheryl Watley. I told my other lawyers. I'm sitting in Ken Anderson's or the district attorney's office in Williams, in the county where this all happened. And I looked at that. They're all circled around me. The prosecutor's over there. I said, oh, no, look, this is a back door. They're going to use this to say that I pled guilty. And Kerry, this is a deal breaker. This is a standard form. They're not going to change this. And God, Ernie, I wanted out so bad. I knew what I'd be going back to. And I knew I was going to die. I was going to be executed. Absolutely no doubt in my mind. But I looked at that, and I took a deep breath, and I said, it's a deal breaker. I can't do it. I won't do it. I won't do it. It needs to be changed to say something to the effect, should there have been a 4th trial, this is what the witnesses would say. I make no allowances for the truth and veracity of it. And Cheryl Watley looked at me and said, they're not going to do it, Kerry. I'm telling you right now, they're not going to do it. 5 minutes later, she came back and said, they'll do it, Kerry. Something's going on. They must know the DNA is not yours. Something's going on. They'll do it. And that's what I signed. And Ernie, to show you how well I had my hand on the pulse of these people, how closely I understood them, I had it right. Just as I'm saying that to my lawyers, how I won't sign that, and like 10 minutes later, after walking out the doors, Buck Files, James Mayfield's attorney that he hired long ago, he is telling the Tyler Morning Telegraph and other media, the Channel 7, that I just pled guilty to the murder. It was over. And he said, because he had already hearing from the wire service, I was saying I was still innocent. And here was a clincher, and I knew it. He said, oh, Cook's dirty. He signed a stipulation. He admitted he did it. See, Buck Files hadn't got the electronic media yet that I'd backed out all the way down and didn't sign that. So they were out to trick me. And I think it was God's providence that he protected me and gave me the presence of mind. Kerry, no. Because otherwise, they would have tricked me and they would have got me.
Yeah.
But they didn't, because I know as I sit here in this chair, not only am I 100% absolutely innocent, but I said that I stood before that judge and I signed no stipulation of evidence. I am a victim of some of the worst misconduct you would ever see in the American justice system.
It is just an amazing story, and I am so pleased that you were able to get through it. I mean, I don't know how someone does that. But thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Ernie. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Kerry Max Cook.
To order a DVD of this or any episode of InnerVIEWS, please visit HoustonPBS.org.